Hi everyone, and welcome to the part 2 of my April book haul. And I'm still drinking the same coffee, and it's disgustingly cold now. But enough about coffee, let's talk about books instead. I have a second part of my April book haul. A lot of books in no particular order, a complete mess, and let's just get on with it. And the first book that I have here is The Midnight Star by Mary Lou. This is book number 3 in her trilogy about young elites. I have not read books 1 or 2, but I decided to pick this one up when I saw it on Book Outlet because I love cheap books, and this is a YA fantasy series, I believe. Or maybe dystopian. Who knows? If you haven't read, please let me know, but I really like the cover, and I just like the covers of the whole series. I think they're very alluring, and I heard very good things about Mary Lou's writing, so hopefully I'll get to them very soon. Next, I have a thriller, which is called The Leviathan Effect by James Lilliefors. This is the book about a hacker who finds out that there is a certain pattern to natural disasters that happen in the world, and it's just like there's something happening, and it's a thriller, and it's an adult novel. I got it from Indigo because it was on sale, and I just looked at this book and I thought that it might be a very interesting read. I'm not very fond of thrillers, just like a typical type of thrillers, but I like the idea of natural disasters. So hopefully I'll like this book. Next, I have a copy of the book that I've been waiting for my library to get forever, and they never did. And that is The Trees by Alice Shaw. This is supposed to be an adult magical realism type of book about trees that kind of like walking trees, like giants. That's pretty much all I know about this book. But it has a fox on the cover, and it's also magical realism, and I think one or two of booktubers that I watch mentioned it, so yes. I got it from Book Outlet, and I was really surprised that they got it there, but when I saw it I was like, yay! I've had this book on my wish list for about a year, might as well buy it. Next, I have an adult fantasy novel, and this is The Summer Dragon, first book in the Evertide series by Todd Lockwood. I honestly have never heard of this author, have never heard of this book until one of my absolutely top favorite fantasy writers, Lynn Llewellyn, just mentioned this author, and she said that she really enjoyed this book. That's why I was like, okay, I'm buying it. I don't care what it's about, but she recommended it, so I'm getting it. And I think it is a debut novel. I'm not sure, do not quote me on that, but that was just the reason for me to buy this book. And I also got it from Book Outlet. I've been waiting for quite a while, but I managed to snatch it from there. Next, I have, quite surprisingly, a copy of Diana Gabaldon's Lord John and the Brotherhood of the Blade, which is either a second book or third book in her kind of like Outlander spin-off series about Lord John. I don't know why I keep buying these books. I have not read a single book by Diana Gabaldon, and I'm not even sure I'm very interested in Outlander. Years ago, when I was looking for something in the terms of historical fiction to read, a lot of people online recommended Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series to me, but they like those books, that cycle never piqued my interest. And then I learned that she has a spin-off series about Lord John, who's one of the characters, like secondary characters in Outlander books, and apparently there is like a gay romance thing going on. Not really sure, but I got book number 1 from my local bookstore, and then I was trying to find a used or like a cheap copy of other books in the series, and this is what I've got. I cannot really tell you what it's about. If anyone read Diana Gabaldon's, let me know, but due to the fact that the main series has a lot of scenes, like violent scenes, and there are also mentions of rape, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not very interested in reading Outlander per se, but I'm kind of curious about this one. I'm not sure, but I just decided to pick it up because it was so cheap. Who knows, maybe it was not a smart choice, but Next, I have a copy of The City Stained Red by Sam Sykes, and I've had Sam Sykes on my radar for a while, and then recently Sam from Sam's Nonsense started mentioning his books, and I decided to pick this one up. It was also at Indigo at a very cheap price. So this is book number 1 in a series. It's Blurred by Scott Lynch and Robin Hobb, both of whom I really admire as authors, and this book was only $6.99 and also was at 30% off. So it was just like ridiculously cheap for such a thick book. Look at this. So this is an adult high fantasy. Know nothing about it, but I'm willing to try it. Next, I have a copy of a book that I absolutely knew nothing about when I picked it up, and that is Bats of the Republic by Zachary Thomas Dodson. So this is, I believe, a standalone sci-fi dystopian novel, an adult one. And what piqued my interest, and I also got it from the Indigo, as you can tell by the sticker, what piqued my interest here is that it's done in a very similar way that Illuminae is done. I'm not very, if you watched my channel before, you probably know that I wasn't a huge fan of Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. That is, as you know, sci-fi young adult series which are told through different documents and video surveillance and all of that jazz. But I was not a huge fan of the book number 1. Book number 2 was better, but I digress. This book seems to be written in a very similar way through different letters, manuscripts, and like diagrams and all of that. That's what piqued my interest. Since I know nothing about this book, I decided to kind of venture out into and just try some other stuff, try other genres and try other books, and this is supposed to be an adult book. And I like the title, Bats of the Republic. Like seriously, and there are a lot of bats here. And also look at this. Isn't it pretty? I think it's very pretty. And for the price of less than $6, I'm sorry, that's just amazing. So I picked this one up. Next, I have a copy of Some Danger Involved by Will Thomas, and this is book number 1 in the series about a Victorian, it's set in Victorian England, and it's a series like of detective novels. I came across some other books by this author and then realized that they were way into the series, like books 4, 5, etc. But then I never read book number 1, and then I was like, oh man, I have to read it. And it took me a while to find this book because it was sold out everywhere. I couldn't find it anywhere. Finally, I think I got it from, well, it says Half Price Books, but it was delivered from US, and it was only $3. So yeah, I'm super excited to read this one. It seems to be a pretty decent, you know, copy, a bit yellow at the edges, but otherwise it's pretty good. And it is like a cozy mystery, Victorian England, which I'm very, very much into. So hopefully I'll have some time to read it very soon. Next, I have a copy of Mad Miss Mimic by Sarah Hanstra. It was one of the impulse purchases. I got it from Book Outlet, and this is a book set in the 19th century. Once again, Victorian England, London, and we have the main protagonist with speech impairment, which I think should be very interesting to read about. I'm not sure if it's more detective or not, but I'm very interested, and I think the cover is actually really pretty. I'm very interested to see how the society and how like everything will be evolving around this main protagonist, since there's an obvious disability involved. But yeah, has anyone read this book? Let me know. Next, I have Fishball by Bradley Sommer, and I saw this book on BookTube maybe a year ago. I'm not even sure who was the first person who mentioned this book. I kind of want to say it was Sophie from Sophie Carlin's channel, but I'm not sure. So essentially this is a book about a fish in a bowl which falls from the top floor of the building and kind of catches glimpses of the lives of people as the ball falls down and passes all of those floors. I found the concept very interesting. I know nothing else about this book except for what I've told you right now, but I saw it on Book Outlet and I was like, why not? I want to read this book, so I picked it up. But yeah, another impulse purchase. I admit that. Next, I have a copy of the book that whenever it was on Book Outlet, it would get sold out before I even could finish my order, and that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I think pretty much every person who reads fantasy and who is on BookTube has either read or hauled or talked about this book, and I'm pretty much the only person who has never even owned a book by Patrick Rothfuss, so yeah, I decided to kind of fix this problem. So anyway, this is book number 1 in his series. I know that the series is still ongoing, which is not really something that I go for. I'm one of those people who have no patience to wait for the next book, I admit that. And second, I also tend to read a lot of books and I prefer to binge read everything together. However, I'm excited to have it, and I didn't really want to pay the full price for it, I'll be completely honest. That's why I was waiting for this book to get to Book Outlet, and I wanted this one. I didn't want like a mass market paperback, I wanted like a regular paperback, and plus it's floppy and quite a big, because even in this one, the font is pretty small. So yeah, it's a pretty hefty book. Next, I have a copy of Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, and this is the book that I got once again because it was on sale at Indigo, and I just went on a huge binge buying spree because all of their bargain books were 30% off, so it's even less than $6. Freaking amazing. I've been kind of on the fence of whether I want to buy my own copy for this book, but then I decided, why not? Might as well. If I don't like it, I can always donate it to the library. But probably everyone read this book, and I'm probably the only one who hasn't yet. Okay, we're almost done. Can you believe that? I cannot believe that. I know that I'm going through these books incredibly fast, but first of all, most of them are quite well known to people on BookTube, and secondly, some of those books I know nothing about, and I would prefer to keep it that way because I'm one of those people who prefer just to jump into the book without actually reading the summary. Sometimes I do read summaries of books, but most of the time I would just read the first half, just try not to spoil myself, because believe it or not, there are certain summaries of certain books which are quite spoilery. That's why we're just going with the flow and breezing through this whole. I wanted to read something by this author for quite a long time, and this is Trudy Canavan, and this is Thieves' Magic, which is book number 1 in her either trilogy or series. Not sure. I honestly know nothing about it. I know this author. She's been writing for quite a long time, quite well known. I've heard very good things about her writing. This is book number 1, like I said, and I only know that it's adult high fantasy. That's all I know. Apparently, that's enough reason for me to spend money on this book. Next, I have a copy of the book that's been haunting me at Book Outlet website, because whenever I pick any book to look at, this book would be recommended to me, which annoyed the crap out of me, to be honest. And then I was like, okay, fine, I'm buying you. And that was Scythe by Neil Shusterman. Actually, is it Scythe or Scythe? I think it's Scythe. But anyway, this is a book number 1 in young adult fantasy series about the school of professional, what do you call them? Like, not even killers, but death? That's like School of Death. Honestly, I know nothing about it, but it had quite a decent rating on Goodreads. That's why I decided to pick this book up. Hopefully it will not disappoint me. It's been a while since I read anything set in a school premise, you know, like one of those like wizard schools or schools for certain types of people. So I'm quite curious to read this one. And the last but definitely not least is the copy of The Orphan Queen by Jodi Meadows. This is book number 1 in high fantasy young adult series. I know nothing about, but I am very much into YA fantasy. If you haven't noticed it before, but fantasy is my favorite genre to read. And recently I've been trying to read as many YA fantasy novels as I can get. Probably some of the books do not really deserve me buying them. Hopefully this is not the case for this one. But I just feel that I've been missing out on such a huge number of books just because I had always, before I started BookTube, I had always been reading only adult fantasy books. I read very few young adult books and middle grade in my life before I started booktube, and once I started I discovered there are like a whole bunch of other books that I knew nothing about, a whole bunch of authors, series, and now I'm trying to catch up and I'm trying to read as much as I can. And this was one of the impulse purchases that I often do on Book Outlet, but I was like, okay, might as well pick it up. If I hate it, then we know what I can do with that. Everything goes to the library. So if you read this book, let me know down below, but I just know that there is a main protagonist, there's magic involved, there's kingdom, she's a princess, and that's it. That's all I know. Okay, believe it or not, but this is it. This is all of my April book haul. I know it was a very hectic and crazy and super fast video. The reason for that being because a lot of books and I was trying to get through them very quickly, and secondly because I had a lot of coffee. That's not helping, I know. I apologize that this video was kind of all over the place, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about the books because I just had so many. But I'm excited because buying books is the best thing that you can do. It's just, it's seriously the best thing ever. In spite of me being a bit all over the place, highly caffeinated, and talking really fast, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you very soon. Bye! God, I really hope that you cannot hear all that noise outside of my window. Because there are sirens, and there is that guy who keeps drumming. And the last but definitely not least is the copy of the Orphan... I hate everything. Ugh. I have a huge pile of books on my floor and I need to put them all back on the shelf, and I have no idea how they're going to fit anywhere because I ran out of shelf space. Now let's go and do some yoga.